Hi everybody, my name is Steve Dimig. I'm an experienced Python developer. This is another video in my series on software development. Today we're going to talk a little about web automation and monitoring and observability. So let's get into it. All right, so the observability stack we're using here is called the TIG stack. It's a popular open source solution for collecting, storing, visualizing time series data using the components of a Telegraph, which is a collector, InfluxDB, which is a time series database, and Grafana, which is a platform for visualizing and analyzing data. It gives you dashboards, alerts, etc. We're going to be focusing on dashboards today, and we'll show you how that all works. All right, for web automation, we're going to be using something called Playwright, which is a library for automation that allows you to do things like click and fill in text boxes, say, submit buttons, all that kind of stuff. So it allows you to basically invoke operations on a web UI without actually doing it physically. You can do it programmatically through automation. All right. The architecture we're using looks something like this. It has a front end with Vue, JavaScript. Anybody who's seen my videos, this is a familiar front end. And the back end's familiar as well. It uses Fast API in Python with the addition of this Telegraph piece here, which is the collector. It basically periodically monitors, it collects measurements from the back end, and then it sends them to InfluxDB. So it writes them out to a database. Grafana uses the output, the database, to create a dashboard, and then we could use that to view all kinds of neat, fun stuff about the application through a dashboard. All right, so let's do a demo here real quick. Okay. All right, so everything is built and deployed using Docker Compose like it has been. So it's, you could use Kubernetes or something like that, but for these simple type of things with, a handful of containers, Docker Compose is handy and useful, and it's less complicated than Kubernetes, so we're using that. All right, so we're going to build it. Typical build steps, we're passing in a token for the InfluxDB. That way we don't have to hard code it within our configuration file. It's going to build, take a couple of minutes to build. Enjoy a cup of coffee while you're doing that. Yeah, so this is the Grafana and the InfluxDB. It'll just pull images down from public places, but it's going to actually build the front end and the back end. So it does take a couple of minutes to get that all done, to package up your Docker containers, but it should be finishing up here just shortly. Okay, we're done. Now we're going to bring it up. We're going to use Docker Compose up to run the containers. And if you go to another window and you say do a Docker PS, you're going to see them running. So you're going to see a, let's see here. Let's break this down. You're going to see InfluxDB, you're going to see Grafana, you're going to see a back end and a front end. So it's all running and going. All right, so what that gives you is you're going to have an InfluxDB here. Here, let's take a look at the Docker Compose real quick. All right, so the Docker Compose file, right there, YAML file. All right, so it's going to give you our InfluxDB instance, our Grafana instance, our front end and our back end. All right. So our InfluxDB, we can log in. No, we're not going to save the password. We can look at the buckets we have out there. Something called sdemic bucket. It's just my name that I'm using for the bucket. All right, we can go to Grafana. Similar type of thing here. You can log in. I've already logged in. We can take a look at our operations dashboard with previously run data. So we have previously run data on here. And we're going to run some more. Look at our front end. It's just a simple front end monitoring and automation. It's got operations A through F. So basically you click a button and it executes an operation on the back end. You can click this button or this checkbox and make that button unsuccessful operation, like a failed operation. So we're going to right now that's clicked, so that's going to be successful. I unclick it, I hit it, that's going to be a failure operation. We can kind of see that when the collection goes on here. If you have some patience, yes, successfully is success equals false. That's going to be an unsuccessful operation. All right, so let's take a look at the back-end code. It's nice and simple. It's just a simple back-end in Fast API. And it just implements these operations called operations A through F. And all they do is basically return a result with the operation that's used to classify the data, a timestamp, and whether it's successful or not. It also has this thing down here called collect metrics, which is going to return a list of metrics that Telegraph is going to use. And we can see how that's done down here. Telegraph here takes inputs from HTTP. It goes to that URL, our Docker internal URL, which is the equivalent of localhost, and it collects the data. It sets up key fields and different things like that, specifies the timestamp, and it sends that data to InfluxDB. We can see that all right here. Here's the input right here, inputs.htp, and the outputs, outputs.influxdb version 2. So it's going to basically take everything from this HTTP call and write it via the Flux line protocol to InfluxDB, and that's going to end up in your database, your real-time or your time series database. And the last piece of it is the web automation here using Playwright. So you can see what's going on here. We open up a browser, a headless browser, using Playwright, and we go through. We have a profile that specifies. Here, I'll show you what that looks like. Let's see what our profile looks like. Right here, profile.json. It gives a series of operations and the number of times you invoke it, and the number of successes and the number of failures. So when we run this through Playwright, it's going to come through and it's going to make clicks on those operations. So it's going to find the operation A, it's going to click that button. We're going to find operation B, we're going to click that button, we're going to come through and we're going to look at the failures. We're going to set the is successful checkbox to false. And then we're going to execute all of our failures here. So these are all going to come up as failures. And that's it. So we can use Playwright to actually invoke these operations on this UI without having to physically do it ourselves, which is powerful and handy. And so let's see how that actually works. All right, so let's take a look at our data, our graph here. Our last collection period here we can see was 4 a.m. It's 5:27, so we should run some new data, and we should see what happens. I'm going to run the data with a profile. It's going to go through. It's going to run the successful ones. So we can see those doing a bunch of posts here. It's going to do operations A through F. It's going to set that checkbox to fail, and it's going to run a bunch of failure operations. We come back to our dashboard, and we can see we had a new collection period here at 5:30. Wait a couple of minutes, and some extras should come in. Yeah, here we go. So we got 72 F operations. We got 48 E operations. We have 29 D operations. We can see that. We can see the number of failures that come through. We got less, right? We don't want to, it's kind of like just an example. But, in real life, you're hoping for less failures than you are success for sure, right? So you got 9 E failures. let's see, here's the current period. Got 7 E failures and 4 A failures and a whole bunch of others. All right, so it shows you all this stuff. Shows you a success rate. The dashboards, I'll show you what they look like. Let's edit one of these dashboards. This is a statistics dashboard. And here down here is called Flux. So this is how you grab data from the InfluxDB database. It's got a language called Flux. You can also use a SQL-like interface, but that's less full-featured than Flux. So I tend to use Flux even though it's not as intuitive, I would say. You have to play with it a little to get it right, but it's powerful. So I end up using that. So here, I'm grabbing the data from the database and I'm making a statistics visualization off it. You can see over here where edit, say, I'm grabbing from the data again and I'm creating a donut out of it. So I got a pie chart and it's a donut. So you can see all that stuff. All right. That's basically it. Like I said, like I always say, good luck. Hope you find somebody you can work with. I would love to be that person. Now I have a lot of experience to draw from. I will work at a reasonable price. I'm semi-retired, so I'm looking, for some work that's challenging and fun that we could do together and, have a mutually beneficial relationship. And I would love to see that type of thing, and hopefully it works out. So see you later, and thank you very much.